Welcome to the Butler Beat. I'm Mallory Duncan. The One America 500 Festival Mini Marathon will be happening very soon in Indianapolis. Thousands of people run in that mini marathon every year, but this year will take on special significance because of the recent bombings at the Boston Marathon. Here today to talk to me about the mini marathon and the 500 Festival is the communications manager, Megan Bulla. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, how many participants have signed up for the race on Saturday?
We have a sold-out race. We have 35,000 participants joining us for the mini. It's the nation's largest half marathon, and then we have another 4,000 for a 5K that morning.
And because of the Boston Marathon, have you ever had any drops from the marathon because of that, or?
You know, we got a few phone calls, but I think after we had sent an email to all of our participants that evening, kind of reassuring them of our safety plan, I don't think anyone actually ended up dropping out. On the other side of that, most people reached out to us saying how much they wanted to be involved in it, how much they wanted to run for those in Boston who couldn't finish. So overwhelmingly, a lot of people I think are just really excited to get the chance to run.
I've heard a lot of stories about people just deciding to get out there and run, especially the next day after the Boston Marathon, so that's a great cause for them. And then in lieu of the bombing, are there any extra security measures that you at the festival have decided to take?
Well, you know, we have a security plan in place every year, and we take a look at that every year just to kind of make sure it's as up-to-date as possible, and we work with all of these various public safety officials across the city, the fire department, police department, Homeland Security. So many different people kind of gave their input into our plan. Given what happened, we did take a look at that, and we are making a few changes to our plan. For example, gear check, which is an option that people can check in their gear while they're running the race. We're not accepting any backpacks. You have to use a bag that we give each participant at the expo. And then in general, if anyone is bringing any kind of backpacks or duffel bags, they are subject to search, which we have never done before.
Okay, and so do you utilize the police force and the fire department to their full capacity on next Saturday?
We do, and the National Guard as well. We have so many different organizations that volunteer their time to help us out and to make sure that we keep all of the participants safe, because in addition to all of the runners, the 35,000 runners, we see about 90,000 people in Military Park afterwards, and that's friends and family who are all gathering to help celebrate the runners' accomplishments. So it's a large crowd that we need to kind of manage.
And so while the runners are actually participating in the race, what's the course of the race and how is that tricky with security?
You know, it's really hard to protect the 13.1 mile open race. We really concentrate on where the start and finish line is. In between that is Military Park, which is the post-race party. So those are our main areas of concern. You know, the race starts downtown, goes out to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, takes one full lap around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then comes back. So it is a large area, but along the route we've got National Guard and volunteers and those people on radio, so if anything should happen, we can communicate quickly to everyone along the route.
Okay, and then as communications manager, have you done any work to stop the fears of the public or just the concerns, or has that not really been an issue?
As I mentioned, the night of the bombing, so last Monday evening, we did send an email out to all of our participants, again, just kind of reassuring them that we have a plan in place, that we're working with those officials in Boston to learn as much as we can to see if we need to change anything. We posted to our website immediately that letter, reached out to the local media, so I feel like we did a good job of kind of jumping ahead of that and making sure that we at least made people feel safe and know that it's top of mind for us.
That's great, and people will be very appreciative of that, I bet. And so more than 500 people are drawn to Indianapolis for the whole festival event. And what do you think some of the biggest draws are of that?
Of the mini marathon? I think really getting the chance to run on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway track. It's the only time that you can do that, especially being kind of a kickoff to the month of May where so many things exciting happen, and we have such a rich racing heritage in Indiana. So that's really what draws people here, is that makes it really unique.
Can you explain some of the events after the mini marathon in the month of May leading to the Indy 500?
Absolutely. The mini marathon is the first weekend in May. The second weekend we have Kids Day, which is the state's largest outdoor festival for kids. So we have a giant 70-foot Ferris wheel and arts and crafts activities, racing themed elements. So it's really a fun day to celebrate kids and really cultivate that next generation of race fans. The third weekend in May, we have breakfast at the Brickyard, which we invite Hoosier mayors from across the state, as well as we crown our 500 Festival Queen out of the 33 princesses. Then moving into race week, that Wednesday we have Community Day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it's really an inside look at the track that you get to go into the pits and the garages and the suites and really get an inside look, and driver autographs. You can drive your own car around the track, so that's kind of fun. And then moving into race weekend, we have memorial service, which is really important to kind of commemorate what that weekend is all about. That's noon on that Friday. And then the day before, we have the parade, which is the third largest parade in the country. About 300,000 people line the streets of Indianapolis to see the balloons, floats, celebrities, and then all 33 drivers as well. So there's a lot going on. And then the race, of course, is, and all of the race activity that leads up to it, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway kind of handles that aspect of it.
Okay, and so you're kicking off this upcoming weekend, correct, with all the things going on downtown. There's a huge event this weekend. Can you describe the event and just what's going on?
For the concert?
Yes.
Yes. Gavin DeGraw will be taking the stage around 9 o'clock this Saturday, and then John McLaughlin will be opening for them. So it's really a kickoff concert to really celebrate what the month of May is all about and get people excited for what's to come.
Okay, and any student needing a break from finals can go down there.
And it's a free concert, so
yeah,
even better.
Study for that. So the theme of the festival this year is turbocharging Indy. Why has the committee chosen the theme, and what does it represent?
You know, each year it's a good question. Each year we kind of come up with a new theme. You know, so many of our events have taken place for decades, so we try to find a way to freshen up the events and come up with a theme that really explains what this year is all about. Really, it came from the turbochargers and the new engines on the cars at the Speedway. So that's kind of where it came from. But we really feel like the 500 Festival turbocharges the month of May. It makes it exciting. We get people just really excited about what's going to be happening out at the track.
And it draws a lot of people in, so.
Exactly. We see about 500,000 people at our events alone. So it's really touching lots of lives, not only in Indiana, but all over the world.
And then many people are involved with not only coming to the festival, but helping out with it. Mm-hmm. Most of it is run by volunteers. So how important are the members of the community of Indianapolis to this festival?
You know, our volunteers are our lifeblood of our organization. We only have 17 people on staff, and then we have 9 seasonal interns as well. But 7,000 volunteers help us out. So everything from passing out water at water stations at the mini marathon to passing out, you know, medals at the rookie run. There's so many different things that our volunteers do, and we just couldn't do it without us. And we're very lucky to be in Indianapolis, where volunteers are so readily available and willing to give their time.
Do you find that volunteers decide to come back after volunteering at the festival for
We
a
do.
year?
We have some volunteers that have been with us for 30, 40 years. We have some that have just multi-generational. They, you know, kind of grew up volunteering with their parents, and now, you know, they bring their kids. So it's amazing to see, like, how many people do come back, because it's just part of their month of May.
It's part of the tradition
Mm-hmm.
with the Indy 500. So how can Butler students who live around the area, because we'll actually be out of class at the point of the mini marathon, how can they help with the mini marathon? Are there places to like go watch along the course that are?
Absolutely. You know, just coming to the post-race party, it actually that area opens up at 7 a.m. so you can watch the beginning of the race, you can watch the end of the race, you can congratulate, you know, so many people get involved. There are probably a lot of Butler students that are actually running the race to support your fellow colleagues. And then, like any of the events that I mentioned, you know, we would love to have students get involved. Even from a volunteer perspective, it's so good to, you know, get involved and give back to your community. So we would love to have that involvement.
So people can still volunteer for all these events?
They can. A few of them have filled up, but I know we are still looking for ushers for the parade and some balloon walkers for the parade. So there are some you know, opportunities that are still open.
How can they sign up to volunteer?
You can go to our website, 500festival.com, and you can either sign up to volunteer there, or you can purchase tickets for any of our events that I've mentioned, or just get more information about what's going on.
Perfect. And then why do you think this festival is important to a city like Indianapolis?
You know, I think it's very unique. There's no other organization out there that's supportive of a sporting event. So it's a completely different not-for-profit organization that is all set to celebrate one day, and that's the Indianapolis 500. So it's very unique in its nature, and it really is a testament to how important racing is to this community, not only from economy and job aspect, but an entertainment aspect. It's been going on since 1909. It's very important. It is the greatest spectacle in racing, and that's what we're all about celebrating.
And not only does it bring the world in and together, but it brings the Indianapolis community together. How do you think or what are some ways that you think it brings the community together?
I think it's just such a great spotlight on Indianapolis. Similar to, when the Super Bowl was here and everyone kind of all eyes on Indianapolis. That's how it is in the month of May, but it's every year.
Yeah.
Every year since, almost the beginning of the last century. So everyone, when they think of racing, when they think of the month of May, they think of Indianapolis, and that's important.
And so because it's on the world stage, it brings like prominence to Butler and prominence to just the Indianapolis community, like you said. On your website it says that it showcases educational benefits to the world. What are some ways that you think it does that as well?
We actually have an education program that we run as well in partnership with Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So in 4th grade in the state of Indiana, students are learning about history. So we provide a curriculum to all of the 4th grade classrooms throughout the state, and they learn about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and all of the events and the history, and then they actually get a chance at the end of that to take a field trip or a study trip to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So we host 11 days throughout April and May where over 1,000 students come every day and actually get to see what they've been learning in the classroom.
So when did this program start?
About 12 years ago. So
Okay.
We've seen about 200,000 students, I believe, come through this program over the past decade. So it is amazing, and it's so interesting to see that we kind of are teaching these kids about the race, and they ask their parents, I want to go to the race, I want to be involved. So it's really teaching that next generation to really appreciate what's here.
Yeah, and just one more question for you. You are involved with this race basically probably all year long. What is your favorite part of not only the mini marathon, but then the 500 festival as well?
Well, the answer is the same. I love I'm at the unique opportunity that I could be at the finish line at the mini marathon. So being there and seeing 35,000 people of all shapes and sizes and ages cross the finish line, it's so absolutely inspiring to see everyone from an 8-year-old to an 80-year-old, and they all have one goal in mind. So just being there and watching people just so happy that they've finished is just inspiring.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Megan.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching the Butler Beat. I'm Mallory Duncan.
And welcome to the Butler Beat. I'm Nicole Thibodeau. While most Butler students move out of the dorm at the end of the school year, a very special few stay back and take on the roles and responsibility. Joining me today is Megan Cullen, resident assistant of Resco. Thank you for joining me, Megan.
You're welcome.
So what made you decide you want to be an RA?
I actually studied abroad my sophomore year, and I went to Central America on the Gala program that Butler offers. And when I got back, I really just wanted to live on campus and be involved, and I feel like I had missed out a little bit. So I was really excited to live on campus and build a community and kind of live in a neighborhood. So that was my motive, but most resident assistants will tell you that they really just like people. So that was part of it too.
So tell me a little bit about your job. What do you do as an RA?
Oh my gosh. We are responsible for kind of maintaining the living situation of on-campus undergraduate residents at Butler. And so we do a lot of policy enforcement, but we also try and foster community for students and give them a home away from home. So that's the primary focus of our job. Then there's little details that get thrown in there, administrative things, but that's for the most part what we aim to do.
So where are you an RA for?
I am an RA at Residential College.
What? That's where I
Yeah,
live.
what? So it's one of the 3 undergrad, I guess, main places for students to live.
How do they divide up and tell you where you're going to be an RA? How does that work?
Well, we take a test actually that's called Strengths Quest, and it is supposed to decipher our strengths as a person and our strongest qualities. And so we get put into different staffs on within the different buildings and then on our own staff in different units based on our strengths and how we drive with our coworkers and themes of unit and just kind of your overall personality and how you can best benefit the staff and how it can best benefit you. So that's how they decide to stick us in different places.
So how did you go about getting the job of being an RA?
I applied. I went through RA selection process. My resident assistant my freshman year, Trisha Wilcox, who has left now because we're old, she actually recommended me to the job, and I worked the front desk my freshman year as well at Switzer. So I kind of knew some people and knew my way around it. So I just jumped in with the process.
Can you be an RA for more than 1 year, or is it like a yearly thing and you have to reapply?
No, you could. Some people, we call them like lifetime RAs. The max that I've ever heard of anyone doing is 4 years, which I think personally is, I mean, kudos to them. I've done it for 2 years at this point, and I think that that's pretty much the average. Very rarely you'll get like a half year RA if something happens, but it ranges between that, 1 semester kind of thing to about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been an RA for 2 years, you just said.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Were you an RA for 3D for both years, or did you move around?
I wasn't. I actually was relocated. I had 3C last year, which was primarily football players and athletes, and then I got moved to 3D this year, which is mostly females, and they're in the sciences. That's kind of the demographic that we got, as well as some music majors. So it definitely was kind of a transition from a sports-themed unit to like more of a social unit. So I mean, yeah, I got switched around a little bit, but it's good.
How many are in your unit?
Gosh, okay, I think that we have, after a couple moves and transfers, approximately 30 or so, and you can have up to about 40, I believe. So we're in a good range at the moment.
Good. Are there any perks to being an RA?
Oh my gosh, so many perks. It's funny because we actually get notice for traveling in packs, I think is the common term, but the perks definitely are your coworkers, and they become some of your closest friends. Most of my best friends at the moment I met on staff, which is great. Financially, they take care of your room and board. The university does. So that's a monetary perk, but really, if your heart isn't in the job, it's not worth it. So I would definitely say that the relationships that you develop, that's probably the best perk.
So what kind of responsibilities do you have as an RA? I know you kind of talked about like what your job was, but like, what kind of responsibilities do you have to do with your job?
I'm responsible for students, and that's just how I see it. Programming is a big part of what we do. We have to meet certain requirements to fit the wellness model that Butler has. So we do approximately, I believe it's 12 to 15 like foundational programs a semester, and that can be through other organizations. I do a lot like of on-campus programs that I put posters up or emails or things for the unit, and then we get a smaller budget with which to do 1 or 2 things. So it just kind of depends. Programming is a big part of it. Documentations for policies is another, but I think we're just responsible for the well-being of students. We do a lot of health and safety checks for room conditions, but also for people, to make sure that they're adjusting well, just being friendly and saying hi, and just making sure that they have like us as a resource. So we got our plates full.
Are there any downsides to being an RA?
I don't want to say yes, but I mean, for the sake of being honest, you are working 24/7. I mean, if you're in your room, you can get a phone call at 2 in the morning or 6 in the morning, or if you need to study at 9 o'clock and you're on duty, you still have to do rounds at 10. So, I mean, you are constantly available, and it can be a little taxing, but I mean, like I said, if you really love your job, then it makes it worth it. So.
You mentioned rounds. Can you tell us what rounds are?
Rounds are the infamous militant proceeding that you see at various times, which I don't know if I can disclose or not, maybe, but we go on around 3 to 4 depending on the day, and we just check the building for damages, for noise violations, and just to check on residents. So rounds are what kind of keep us in the loop for the most part.
So what are you studying here at Butler?
I'm studying history, which I want to say is the best major, but
Yeah.
I can't really.
Do you ever find it difficult to manage like school and being an RA?
It is kind of hard. I mean, I think that you have to be really realistic about priorities, and that can be kind of difficult when you care so much about your residents or about your coworkers or about school. You have to like have your eggs in a row, or ducks in a row, eggs in a basket. Some saying like that, but it can be a little difficult. I really love the planner, and it helps. Breaks are really nice too, so you can rejuvenate. But I think for the most part, we all do a pretty good job.
With school wrapping up now, do you guys have anything special you have to do? I know we're getting all the emails about...
You guys are getting so many emails, and there are a ton of posters, and there will be more emails and more posters. We just had our closing unit meetings. Students are about ready to head out. About 24 hours or so, I think, is the max after their finals. So they're going to be headed home, and we're just doing all of our end of programming events, Stress Less Week has been going on for finals, so we want them to take advantage of that. And then we'll be going through the rooms for the health and safety checks to close up. But it never really ends because summer students are moving into D Wing, which is, where I'm at, and, a lot of other people. So it's just going to be a work for a little while.
Right.
But
How late do you have to stay after school's over?
I am staying for commencement this year, so I will
Right.
be here until the 11th. I think most RAs have to stay until the 12th
Okay.
because that's as long as students can stay. So we will be here about 2 weeks after some people start leaving. So
Do you have any other jobs besides being an RA?
I have had jobs throughout my career as an RA. I do work at the desk now at Resco, so come see me if you need anything. But I also worked at a restaurant. I did an internship at an archive. So, you can have like a life outside of the position. You just have to make sure that you're in zen, I guess, with the balance.
So does that ever conflict? Do you have to I can't do this because I have to do
yeah,
RA things?
sometimes like if your friends want to go bowling or if you have a date night and you're on duty or you have to run to one job or the other, it can be a little,
Right.
difficult to balance and manage. But most people are pretty understanding. So
What advice would you give to someone who's interested in being a future RA?
think about it. Definitely mull it over because it is a big commitment. But if you're really passionate about it and if you want to get involved on campus, it's a great way to meet people and it's a really good experience. So I would definitely recommend it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any interesting stories about being an RA? And,
Oh my gosh.
Closing comments?
I don't
Sorry
know.
to put you on the spot. Do you have one?
No, you're fine. I don't know if they're appropriate. There's been a lot of interesting. We had these body size holes that were in one of the units in Resco this year, and we don't know where they came from. Like, how did a hole that's the size of me happen and no one noticed? And there were several, so that was really interesting. We've had people, running away from us as we approach, and losing their shoes and leaving them, as sacrifice. So it's always interesting. It's never boring.
It's never a dull day.
No.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today,
you.
Megan. And good luck on your finals, by
I
the way.
appreciate you too, girl.
I'm Nicole Thibodeau, and thank you for watching the Butler Beat.
Hi, and welcome to the Butler Beat. I'm Evie Schultz. Social media pages like Butler Confessions and BU Secret Admirers have become increasingly popular among students. Social media sites like these can be fun, but is there a certain point at which some posts on those sites become inappropriate? With me today is Butler teacher and multimedia coordinator Eric Esterline to discuss our online rights and the do's and don'ts of social media. Thank you so much for being here today, Professor Esterline.
Thank you for having me.
What is your opinion of these social media sites?
I've checked them out, and I don't actually follow them on Twitter. I don't like them on Facebook or anything like that. But I've checked them out, and I think the Secret Admirer one's pretty harmless. But the Confessions one can get a little obscene at times and can go over the line. But as far as connecting them to Butler University, they're not an official Butler University site or anything like that. So I think they're fairly harmless. Yeah.
These sites also exist at other schools throughout the country. Why do you think they've become so popular among college students?
Well, it's what college students talk about on a regular basis, and it's just and college students now connect through social media, and it's just another way of getting different things out in the open, I guess, and discussing and having fun with different things, I guess. But they're popular because social media is what's popular with college students right now.
The First Amendment guarantees our right to freedom of speech. However, what happens if posts become malicious or say something mean about someone that isn't necessarily true?
All right. Well, you can't really police that too much. There are some instances where things can be overly obscene, and then that the First Amendment really doesn't protect that. Or if you get into things like child pornography or reporting or posting things about inciting unlawful things or things like that, and that's where your First Amendment rights really aren't protected. So that's where the line's drawn, I think. But as far as having somewhat harmless fun on there, I think is okay, and your rights are protected.
What should someone do if there's something on there that's about them that they don't like? Can they have it taken down?
Well, I don't know. It really depends on the people that are actually in control of the site. If there's something that may infringe upon those First Amendment rights, I guess, that's when you would have to report it to the police. Even here at BUPD, you could report it to them, and then they could investigate it a little bit further. But Other than that, I don't think you really have too much control over what's been posted. And, you know, I get reading some other things I've heard about from the actual person, the creator, I guess, of these, is that they kind of police it themselves as well, and they draw the line on some things that get posted. So that's good that at least that person is somewhat responsible in doing that.
Yeah, that's a lot of responsibility
Yeah.
to have. And Butler has its own set of social media guidelines. Tell me about those.
Well, it's been posted quite often, and it's really, you know, any kind of social media guidelines, things that you would expect, and they're for everybody at the university. They're mostly put in place for faculty and staff and those that work at Butler University, but they'd really like the students to follow those as well because, you know, as a college student, you're transitioning from sort of that adolescence into the professional world, and you really want to have a professional manner and way that you're posting things on social media. So it's really important that you follow those guidelines, and, you know, being a part of Butler University in the Butler way, it's really important that you take a professional you know, approach to using social media.
Why were these originally established?
I think just because it's kind of just hard to get away from social media, and they know pretty much everybody's using it now, and for legal purposes, they're established for the university to kind of back them up if there's any sort of legal issues that would come from anything that's posted from faculty and staff here at the university. And it's just another way for those here at the university to kind of teach college students on the proper etiquette and approaching social media.
Has Butler had any issues with improper use of social media that they've noticed with faculty and staff?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's some things that pop up from time to time where things need to be retracted and that sort of thing. But nothing that, you know, that I'm aware of that's been overly bad, I guess. Yeah.
In your opinion, did these pages, such as BU Secret Admirers and Butler Confessions, follow the social media guidelines set by Butler?
No, not necessarily, but they're not an entity of Butler University, so they don't necessarily have to follow those guidelines because they really want them to be anything that's associated with Butler University or uses the Butler University logo or any other copyrighted assets that Butler University holds. They would have to follow those guidelines, but since this is not associated with Butler University, they do not.
In your classes, you talk a lot about the importance of social media. How important is it for students to maintain a positive presence on the internet?
I think it's very important, especially when you're getting ready to head out into the job world. You know, the internet is forever, and you can search and find pretty much anything. If you were to search a specific student site for you know, future employment, they can pretty much find anything that you've posted. And it's just forever, and you can't get away from that, and things can be found out. So it's really important for students to start to transition into being more of a professional presence on social media sites rather than using them to socially connect and post fun things.
What do employers look at when searching the internet for a potential employee?
They can easily just do a Google search for the person's name, and you have to do some digging, and employers hire people specifically, or firms if they're a big enough company, to search social media sites for those that they're thinking about employing. They look for people that are actually posting professional resources, interacting with other people in their profession in a positive manner, and if they see things that are inappropriate, then those are big red flags.
What are some rules students should follow when they're posting on their personal pages on social media sites?
Well, the biggest one, the biggest rule to follow is to think first, and to double check to make sure that if you're posting something of a professional nature, that you've checked sources and all that sort of stuff, and that you're not posting any copyrighted information, and you cite people if it's their work that you're posting or retweeting or something like that. But the biggest advice I can give is to think first and make sure if you don't want your parents or your boss or somebody to see something, then you shouldn't post it.
What are your biggest do's and don'ts on social media? For anyone's phone, not just students, but...
Well, one of the big things for me personally is that I don't like to take pictures of people in a private situation and then post those online, because you really are supposed to get the permission from those people that are in that private situation to be able to post. Now, if you're at a public event, a football game or a concert or something like that, there's no control over that because you just can't do that. But so I think that's one of the biggest dues is to make sure you get permission when you're posting people's either personal information or personal pictures or something like that.
Okay. Have you ever had students come to you who have had issues with social media before, or who have gotten in trouble with things they posted online?
No, not necessarily, but I do, have some people come to me for advice sometimes, especially when they're wanting to try and get connected professionally, and they're really wanting to build their professional portfolio, I guess, online. So, developing a LinkedIn profile and developing a Twitter profile that will meet the needs professionally for this person in the job world, and then thinking about and telling them, Facebook was, kind of early on the one place where a lot of people socially connected, and going through and going back and maybe deleting old posts if you can, and that sort of thing from maybe some silly things that you've posted before.
You mentioned LinkedIn and Twitter. What are some of the best sites students can use to connect professionally? Are those some of the better ones?
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn is a good one. And Twitter, I found out a lot lately, is a really good a place to kind of be able to find resources online, to be able to see available jobs that are out there. And depending on your specific profession, there's just different people that you can follow. And one of the best things that I like to do when I'm trying to search for better resources is when I find somebody good to follow, I go in and see who they're following and kind of build on that. So I think Twitter right now is one of the best places for employment information, as well as LinkedIn, and just building a good profile on there as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Professor Esterline, and for all of your advice about social media.
Sure.
Thank you for joining me. I'm Evie Schultz, and you are watching The Butler Beat.
Earth Day was celebrated recently, and in honor of Earth Day, multiple groups on campus have been sponsoring events to spread the word. One key issue is sustainability. Here with me today from the Center for Urban Ecology at Butler is Aaron Harrison. Thanks for being here, Aaron.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, no problem. So we're just going to start out. If you could tell me a little bit about what sustainability is, and if you think there are any misconceptions that people have when they hear that word.
Yeah, sure. So sustainability is often mixed up with sort of the green movement, which they're definitely related, but not entirely the same thing. So there's a commission set up by the UN in the 1980s, and they've sort of defined sustainability in the way that I think is the most appropriate. And it's essentially living in a way now that doesn't affect future generations.
Okay.
And so that sort of broadens the horizon. That sustainability is not just recycling, it's not just planting trees, but it's how do we make every decision during our daily lives, and how do we think about what that means for the future. So that if that means, our purchasing, what are we wearing, what are we buying, how does that contribute to poverty across the world? How does that contribute to sort of affecting the quality of life?
Interesting.
So sustainability is a broad concept that incorporates a lot of ideas and ways of living.
Okay, so when you say sometimes it gets confused with the green movement, what exactly do you mean by the green movement?
Yeah, so the green movement that's arguably started, probably pushed hardest in the 1980s. And that's more focused on when you think of the traditional, like we need to plant trees for the earth, things like Earth Day, which have sort of become broader, but at their heart, they started it as these practices like recycling, like composting, like sort of greening cities and natural spaces. So I think the green movement is sort of more focused on strictly landscape and sort of traditional environmental focuses. Sustainability is more than just. It is definitely the environment, but it's also, it's almost a rethinking of the environment to include like our day-to-day living.
Okay, so could you expand on what makes sustainability so important?
Yeah, sure. Well, as I said, sustainability, everything we do affects the people that will come after us. And so it's easy to think of now like, I need to sort of get on with my daily life. I need to sort of focus on what I'm doing now. I can't really think of, like the larger effects of my behavior.
Okay.
However, sustainability sort of causes you to rethink and refocus. Every action we take has long-term implications, and I think we really need to focus on how do we pay adequate attention to those long-term implications.
Good. So do you have any advice for ways that students can make more sustainable decisions right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, part of it is just sort of rethinking, being conscious of what we do, being conscious of how we act, how we go about our daily lives. But there's plenty of ways to get involved in campus. I mean, this is one of the most exciting times to be at Butler because there is so much going on with sustainability on campus. And it's not just sort of Center for Urban Ecology or green operations concept, but it's going across the board. So how are academic departments getting involved?
Okay.
How is the HRC? How is Atherton? And sort of every part of campus, how are we all working towards sustainability? So I think over the next few years, we'll be seeing a lot of opportunities through all of these different departments in terms of how you can get involved with sustainability.
Good. So in your opinion, how do you think Butler's doing so far? And can you think of any examples of what different groups are doing?
Sure. Yeah, so Butler, I think we are at a point where we are getting ready to greatly expand. Yes, we still have more to do, granted. There's still room to grow. But part of what we're doing now is forming a climate action plan, which is essentially a master plan document for sustainability on campus. Last April, President Danko, during Earth Week, signed a President Climate's Commitment, which commits us to carbon neutrality by some date around 2050.
Okay.
So right now we have formed a sustainability council that is focused on drafting that document, initiating proposals that will get us to that level, carbon neutrality.
Okay, and for those of us who are not so savvy with the terminology, what is carbon neutrality?
Yeah, so carbon neutrality is zero net carbon emissions. So we emit carbon dioxide in a lot we do, and traditionally that's kind of associated with consumption of fossil fuels.
Okay.
So the easiest way to think about it is if you drive a car on campus, your car is emitting carbon dioxide. And so carbon neutrality is saying how do we get that level to zero?
Okay.
And sometimes it involves not only, because you will inevitably consume some or emit some carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So how do you sort of match those with practices that actually save greenhouse gas emissions to get to a zero net carbon emission, essentially.
Okay, and so we know that a lot of the buildings on campus are really old. Is that a factor in getting this carbon neutrality?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So for our new buildings, we've initiated a LEED Silver policy. LEED is a sort of certification for building sustainability, essentially. And so there's several different levels of LEED, and for LEED Silver, you have to meet certain qualifications for that building. So all of our new construction is LEED Silver, which makes us a more sustainable campus. But we are in the process of working on sort of retrofitting and upgrading our previous campus buildings to meet these qualifications. It will take some time, but the process is already starting.
Okay. All right, great. So we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit, and can you just tell us about the Center for Urban Ecology and how they're involved in this whole thing?
Sure. So the Center for Urban Ecology started, I believe, 2004 on campus. Yeah, started previously. And it focuses on a lot of aspects. So a lot of what it does is student research towards sustainability. We've done several different research projects. It also is sort of a resource for campus. So let's say that your department has something that they would like to do towards sustainability. You can work with us and we can help you sort of advise you on that. We also work with a lot of organizations throughout the city. So we are very well connected, even to sort of city government, and we have connections in the mayor's office. And so we're big focused on making Butler a leader in sustainability, not just on campus, not just between campuses, but in Indianapolis as well.
All right, awesome. Could you expand on that and maybe tell us about how you're intertwined with Indianapolis organizations?
Yeah, so we do programming throughout the year with different organizations. Right now there's a series of events called We Are City going on in Indianapolis, and it's focused on how do we rethink what it means to be a city and what it means to be a community. So they use art and multimedia to sort of refocus people and engage them into the daily happenings of their city, instead of just sort of focusing on us as individuals, us throughout our family lives, and kind of being isolated. How do we expand that to include the whole community, sort of be one big happy family, I guess, if you will.
Okay, awesome. So there's also a campus farm. Is that related to the CUE?
Yeah, so the campus farm is under the CUE. It's an opportunity for students and even community members to go and purchase fresh produce from their local community. I mean, you can purchase produce that was grown in Butler. You can also volunteer. Our farmer, Tim Dorsey, is always willing to have volunteers. He's always willing to talk to people at the farm, right by the intramural fields. It's a great resource, and I think it's unfortunate that more students don't use it.
Yeah, so students can just go and buy fresh vegetables,
Yes,
fruits? Like,
yes,
what are they growing
anytime.
out there?
Right now, I'm not sure. We
Okay.
just started our summer produce, so I'm not entirely sure. It changes every year.
That's neat. That's really neat.
Yeah, is the difficulty. But yeah, contacting Tim, he has they're actually different packages. So if you wanted to, let's say you're living on campus during the summer, there are different packages to where you can sort of buy boxed produce that he grows, and there are different amounts of produce that you can purchase from there. So yeah, you can contact him at any time. And
Okay, what was his name again?
Yeah, Tim Dorsey.
Okay.
And I don't know if you need the email, but the email is cuefarmer@outlook.com. So easy enough to remember.
Yeah, easy enough. So that's a really great resource for students over the summer looking to be more sustainable. They can utilize this right on campus.
Absolutely.
All right, that's really great. So you do serve you have multiple hats on campus. You're also with Green Ops for CPA.
Yes.
So what are they doing with this whole sustainability movement?
Yeah, so Green Ops is a new committee within CPA on SGA. It started 2 years ago, and it was sort of a subcommittee, and now has grown into a full-fledged committee and continues to expand. Our focus is sort of being a bridge, as CPA's focus is being a bridge between the students and the administration of Butler. So Green Ops focuses specifically on really sustainability at this point. So in addition to serving on the Sustainability Council that I mentioned earlier, we work in a lot of programmatic events throughout campus, like Earth Week that we have going on now. We also do projects throughout campus. So I don't know if you've seen the Brita filters throughout campus, but that was us behind those. TerraCycling, which has just started in the residence halls on campus, was our project. And so we do, we do a lot of projects and then programmatic events on campus. And we're looking to expand our operations to include working with other universities come next fall. So
awesome. All right. So just in wrapping up, we talked a lot about sustainability, about ways students can be more sustainable. So what's the message that you want students to take home from this interview?
Yeah, sustainability it's a task that is not as difficult as you may think. What we're working on, whether it be the Q or Green Ops, is sort of how do we make this a daily living? So how do we make it just something that people do and you don't even have to think about? How can we sort of work with your daily lives to make it as convenient? Because a lot of times it is inconvenient, like recycling. When you look at a container, even I don't know, can I recycle this? Can I not?
Right.
It's so difficult. So we're trying to facilitate that. So just be mindful and know that you can do something about it. This is the opportunity where the university is listening to students' voices and saying, what do you want to see? So if you're interested in sustainability, get involved, get connected with the Q, get connected with Green Ops, get connected with the Sustainability Council. Give us your voice and changes will happen.
All right. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for being my guest today. I'm Molly Swiger, and you're watching the Butler Beat.